you move now from the world of the intellect, because understanding something intellectually is very different than understanding something spiritually. To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination as an I am, but you must be able to feel it. Our feelings are the things that take place in our body. It says, Neville says, and I have this on next to my bed where I live in Maui, make your future dream a present fact by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So whatever it is that you would like to experience in your life, remember, your imagination is yours. Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined. Okay? Henry David Thoreau had probably the greatest definition of success that I have ever heard. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. It will chase after you if you can place into your imagination what it is that you would like to attract and begin to feel it. Listen to Neville. This is one of my most favorite quotes from The Power of Awareness. That which you feel yourself to be, you are. And you are given that which you are. So assume the feeling that would be yours were you already in possession of your wish. And your wish must be realized. So live in the feeling of being the one you want to be, and that you shall be. Every feeling makes a subconscious impression. And unless it is counteracted by a more powerful feeling of an opposite nature, it must be expressed. Your feelings are different from your thoughts. Your feelings are what you experience in your body. The dominant of two feelings is the one expressed. I am healthy is a stronger feeling than I will be healthy. I am healthy says I feel healthy, and I feel healthy. I feel great. I don't determine if I am well on the basis of what it says on a piece of paper or on the basis of what somebody else out there tells me. I live my life feeling within my body that I am strong, I am capable, I am able. And that is not just something that I say. It's not just an affirmation. An affirmation is an intellectual exercise. This is a spiritual knowing within that I am well. I am content. I am prosperous. But the words that Neville used there are the subconscious. Every feeling that you have makes a subconscious impression upon your body and upon your awareness. Now, you need to understand the subconscious mind of yours. Your subconscious mind rules your life. 96 to 97% of everything that you do is done as a result of your subconscious mind. And when your subconscious mind gets programmed, it goes ahead and responds to whatever it is your conscious mind has placed into it. And to feel it, not just to think it, but to feel it. Neville's law of assumption says this: if this assumption about what you would like to become is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is absolutely inevitable. You must first assume the feeling of a wish fulfilled in all aspects of your life. So you have to say to yourself, what does it feel like to be prosperous? What does it feel like to be content? What does it feel like to be well? And I had to remind myself of that when I had this leukemia diagnosis. I had to remind myself, I was down about 30 minutes until I realized that virtually everything that shows up in my life has been a blessing. Virtually everything. All of the struggles, whether it's in, addictions, or whether it's in living in foster homes and being abandoned, whether it's my wife and I separating and the pain of that, whatever it might be. A dear friend of mine was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She passed away a few years back, and she was the one who wrote so much about death and dying. She had a wonderful and important message for us. She said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. And the beauty of the carvings comes from being able to be in a state of gratitude for the storms that show up in our life just as much as the things that we would like to have show up in our life. You have to start retraining your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, it responds to what it is that you suggest to it. Now, the intriguing thing about your subconscious mind, your habitual mind, is that it can't make a distinction between what it is that you are feeling as a result of what you have placed into your imagination and assumed the feeling of it, and what you are experiencing every day in your life. If you go around feeling unhappy, depressed, miserable, sad, whatever, your subconscious mind says, oh, so this is what it is that you would like to attract into your life. And the universal subconscious mind, to which we are all connected, that we call the creative source of the universe, the divine mind, God, the Tao, whatever you might want it to be, it will begin to offer you experiences that match up to what it is that you are feeling, so your body responds to what it is you place into your subconscious mind. You have to retrain it.
Let me share something with you from Power versus Force. Pain exists to promote evolution. Its cumulative effect finally forces us in a new direction. Though the mechanism may be very, very slow, how many times is it necessary, he asks, to hit bottom before a lesson is learned? Perhaps thousands, which may account for the sheer quantity of human suffering so vast as to be incomprehensible. But slowly, ever so slowly, by inches, does civilization advance. By inches. And as many times as I was interviewed on TV after the events of the 11th of September 2001, when people ask me about my view of humanity and do these kinds of things suggest that we are moving backward or forward, my suggestion is always that we are moving forward. And that these kinds of events bring out in us the very best that humanity has to offer, as difficult as it is for us to see in the moments. And I think back to not too long ago, in 1958, I was in the United States Navy. I was in a radio school there in a place called Havre de Grace, Maryland, Bainbridge, Maryland. And my best friend in life at that time, who was in the boot camp with me, was named Rayford Secundus Dudley. And he was a black young man from Chicago. And it was 1958. And we walked into a diner in Havre de Grace, Maryland at 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were both in the uniform of the United States Navy. And they wouldn't serve us because he was black. In 1958. And I walked out of there in shock that a man who was serving his country and in the service could be denied to have an omelet with me. And we both, of course, walked out. And I think back to 1958, and now it's 40 or so, 45, hard to imagine, years have passed. And that kind of thing is impossible in this country today. It just doesn't happen. Inch by inch, slowly. And there are many, many more examples. One of my favorite is getting on an airplane out in Wyoming, and a woman's voice came over the PA and announced that she was the pilot and that she was flying us to our destination. And a man was walking through the aisles asking if we wanted coffee, tea, or milk. And I thought, now there's an example of transformation. And when I graduated from high school, the number of women that were admitted to law school and medical school was somewhere around 1 or 2%. And now it's somewhere around 50%. Slowly, inch by inch. And when those planes flew into the World Trade Center, it brought out the very best in millions of us, not only in America, but around the world. And I believe what Hawkins is speaking about, that we have to treasure our divinity by remembering that our basic inherent goodness is what is in there. He says, that which is injurious loses its capacity to harm when it is brought into the light. And now nothing need remain hidden. Every thought, every action, every decision or feeling creates an eddy in the interlocking, interbalancing, ever-moving energy fields of life, leaving a permanent record for all of mankind and all time. And he says this even further, in this interconnected universe, now we're talking about the highest level of unity consciousness, God consciousness, divinity consciousness. In this interconnected universe, every improvement we make in our private world improves the world at large for everyone else. We all float on the collective level of consciousness of mankind so that any increment we add comes back to us. And simple kindness to oneself and all that lives is the most powerful, transformational force of all. It produces no backlash, has no downside, and never leads to loss or despair. Every thought is in a permanent record of all of mankind. And ever so slowly, we move.
And a word needs to be said here about failure. You have to understand that you don't fail at anything in life. You can't fail at anything. That's really an important notion. Everything you do produces a result. If you take a golf ball and put it up on a golf tee and you swing at it, and it dribbles off to the side, you haven't failed. You've produced a result. The question isn't whether you're willing to fail or not, or what you do, or whether or not you're a failure. The question is, what do you do with the results that you produce in your life? If you weigh 300 pounds and you want to weigh 125 pounds, you haven't failed. You've produced massive results. The question is, what do you do with the results that you have produced? Do you tell yourself that, oh, I'm no good at this, and you put a label on yourself and stay away from the unknown? Or do you make an effort to learn from what you've produced? I'll give you an example on the tennis court. My doubles partner made a bad shot, and he screamed something out, called himself a name. He said, you jerk, you dummy. He was talking to himself. And I stopped and I said, Lenny, I really don't appreciate it when somebody calls my partner a jerk and a dummy. I said, who was that? Who was doing that? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, whoever it is that's calling my partner a jerk and a dummy, I'd like you to get in touch with him and remind him that he's a beautiful guy and he just didn't hit the shot the way he wanted to. I'd like you to tell that person that. It's like a reminder that when you call yourself a name, you know, you got two people going here. You got the person who's the recipient, the jerk, and you got the person doing the calling. Well, you want to get those two in balance. You want to get those two in harmony. You want that person, whoever that is saying, you jerk, to say, you're allowed to make an error in tennis. You have to do it. Nobody goes through a whole match without making errors. And that it's okay, and that you forgive yourself, and you're kind to yourself. And then the recipient of that is in balance, so that those two people, quote, or those two parts of you are in harmony. Because if the part of you that's calling you a jerk, if the recipient of that begins to believe that, then you start acting on what you hear and what you believe. And pretty soon, everything that you say to yourself, if you call yourself a jerk enough, you're going to think that you're a jerk. And that's one of the problems with self-esteem. It's people who have really talked to themselves in such a way that the self and the I, which we've separated, they become the same. And so the person who's doing the calling believes that they're a jerk, and the person who's the recipient believes it. And if they had an observer there, if that I who was doing that instead was saying, you know, you're pretty terrific. You know, you make some mistakes. All of us do, but that doesn't mean that you're bad and that you're not any good. And you get those two in harmony so that you are never calling yourself anything but what you would like to be. And the more you do that, the more that you'll be in harmony.
And you don't learn these things through instruction. You don't learn these things by somebody else telling them to you. You've got to learn them through the direct experience of it. It's almost as if God said, all right, here you are. You showed up, and you want to teach people about self-reliance? Get your little ass into an orphanage for 10 years. And learn how to do that. Learn how to rely on yourself. Become inner-directed. Become self-directed. And don't complain about it, and don't whine about it, and find something beautiful in it. And that's what we do when we're children. We don't wake up when we're an orphan and when we're a child every day and say, oh my God, I'm an orphan again today. It's Wednesday. I was one yesterday, now it's tomorrow. When is this going to end? You don't do that. You wake up and you deal with what you have to deal with. And you get on with your life. And now you can look back at your life, and most people look back at the experiences of their life and say to themselves, if only it would have been different. If only. And there is no if only in there. It was all in order. Life gives exams. Bernie and I and Joan had dinner together last night, and we were talking about the variables that we see in highly successful people. And I said, finally, you know, there's a thread that runs through all of this. There are people who go through life and have really tough experiences. Most of the time when you read about people who abuse their children, and you interview them, you find that, what? They were abused as children. I mean, it's something that you all know. You can shout it out. And then there are some who were abused as a child. I was one, not viciously, but on some occasion. And while this is happening, you make an inner vow that this isn't going to be anything I'm going to partake in. And I would never do this to one of them. Like, you learn from it, or you repeat it. You take the things that come along, and when you get to that spiritual place in your life, you begin to see that these things all have great lessons in them. And instead of saying to yourself, why is this happening to me? Isn't this awful, poor me? You begin to say, what do I have to learn from this? Because you have banished the doubt that this is some sort of freak accident that you're in, and you begin to see that this is an intelligent system that you're all a part of.
One of the big victim traps that so many people find themselves in is being seduced by what is over. I always tell people what is over, and you can't change it, you can't should have done it, you can't would have done it, you can't could have done it. You've got to stop all that shoulding on yourself, if you will. And what you want to do here is look at how you get to be victimized by things that have already happened. Everything that you did in your life up until this moment is over. It's done. It had to happen in order for you to get to the next level. Accept that. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by things that you can't change, things that are over. Your parents were the parents that they were. Your parents did what they knew how to do, given the conditions of their life. They didn't do it good, they didn't do it bad, they weren't right, they weren't wrong. They just were who they were. And they did what they knew how to do. And if what they knew how to do didn't fit in with what you think they should have been doing, then learn from it, grow from it. Don't be full of anger and hatred for them. That's the biggest victim trap you can get into, being mad at somebody for what they did 25 years ago. And besides, they're a different person today anyway, and probably wouldn't do it that way at all. So what you want to do is look at everything that you find yourself upset about or manipulated by or controlled by, and change all of that. Shift it around. Shift it around to a new kind of consciousness. And that consciousness is, I can't change what's over. So all of the things that you did in your past, and all of the shoulds that people are imposing on you, are things that you're going to have to watch out for. One of the big victim traps people are going to use is they're going to tell you what you should have done. If only you would have listened to me. If only you would have done it before. If only you would have done things the way I said. And when anybody ever does that, that sends off a signal in me. There's a flag that goes up, and I put that, it's a mental flag, and it goes right up into my head. And that flag, it says, I should have done it that way. I already did it. That's already over. And if somebody starts telling me over and over if only you would have listened to me, I will even ask them questions like, how can I have listened to you now? How can I do that? Explain how I can do that. And usually that just stops them, because they see that there's no way that you can have listened to them when that time is over. If only you wouldn't have moved to Chicago in 1957. If only you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't be having all these troubles now. How could you not have moved in 1957 when it's in 1991? How can you do that? It's not possible. So you have to be watchful for that and look out for the victimizers who will resort to looking at what is over and try to keep you their victim by constantly putting you back there.
Your life is like a boat, and it's heading up the river at, say, 40 knots, all right? And as it's going, you are somehow able to metaphorically stand on the stern, the back of the boat, and look down into the water. Now there goes your life in this direction, and you're standing here and you're looking down into the water, and you ask yourself these three questions. The first question, what is the wake? What is it? What is this thing that you see? And the answer, the wake is the trail that is left behind. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the trail that is left behind. Second question to ask yourself in this little metaphor, what's driving the boat? What's making this thing go in this direction? The answer, the present moment energy that's being generated by the engine, and nothing more. That's the only thing that's making the boat go in this direction. And in this little scene, this means it's the present moment thoughts that I have and how I am using them that is making my life go in this direction, and nothing more. Because the third question is the most important and powerful question. And ever since I heard it, I've always thought about this whenever I have a tendency to look back here and blame something. Is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? That is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? And of course the answer to that is no. It can't. It's just a trail that is left behind. And in that trail, there are an enormous number of things, and every one of us has a wake. And we have a whole lot of stuff in it. And one of the problems that we have is that we have a tendency to look at the wake and all of the stuff that's in it to explain why it is my life isn't working the way I would like it to work. So that you can take a look at the experiences of your life. I look at the experiences of my life. In the experiences of my life, I spent some years in a series of foster homes. People have said to me, oh, living in a foster home, that must have been terrible. I said, no, it wasn't terrible at all. When you're 6 years old, you don't wake up every day and say, oh my God, I'm living in a foster home. Isn't this awful? Poor me. How come me and nobody else? You don't do that. You don't do that till you're 40. And when you're 40 and your life isn't working and you're bankrupt and you're a drug addict and your relationships are all falling apart and your family's leaving you, and you say, why is this happening to you? You say, what do you expect from me? I had to live in a foster home. My mother liked my sister better. We were too this, we were too... And so it's like we take a look at all of these things in our wake. And I'm not saying here that you shouldn't be in touch with your past and all of the things that are back there, but to use it as excuses for why you can't get where you'd like to get today is something that if you do that, you will never get to this place that I'm talking about in this program, which is this place that I call higher awareness, way beyond ordinary human awareness.
You have within you the power to create a series of ideas for yourself that will erase obstacles to your highest calling. When you imagine that you're free of any need to use excuses, you'll ultimately act on what you're imagining. So practice the process of envisioning precisely what your life would look like and feel like if it were impossible to enlist your excuse patterns. A good way to begin is by getting accustomed to visualizing exactly who you are as if you've already arrived. Seeing who you want to be as already here. Our poet friend, Mr. Blake, is saying that we imagined these self-limiting ideas before they became facts in our lives. Memetics, genetics, early childhood reinforcements, cultural conditioning, and years of thinking limiting thoughts join forces to become the excuses that have come to feel like reality. If William Blake's observation is true for you, its corollary applies as well. In other words, if you make the excuses begone shift and hold fast to its ideas, then you prove to yourself just how powerful your imagination is. This is why I included the words already here concerning the way you want to see yourself. For all intents and purposes, what you actively imagine is authentically and undeniably already here. So you can absolutely change from self-defeating excuses to self-enhancing actions. Once your new thinking habits are truly in place, it's the same as saying that you're already actualizing what you want. When I was in my early 20s, I used the imagination practice on the excuse, I'm too tired. I'd heard this so frequently that it finally became a mind virus I mimicked and employed regularly. It was a convenient but debilitating excuse because thinking and talking about how tired I was made me more fatigued than I actually was. The more I said the words, I'm tired, the more my energy seemed to be depleted, even when there was no physical reasons behind this. One morning, after listening to a friend tell me that he was too exhausted to carry out a planned weekend retreat, I decided to end my use of this excuse permanently. I pledged to never again tell others or myself how tired I was, and I began imagining myself in possession of unlimited energy. I didn't change my sleep habits or take energy supplements or change my lifestyle. All I did was imagine myself as a high-energy person. I was able to change the way I viewed myself in relationship to fatigue and started to see myself as a never-tired person. This all started with a new thought, which was placed first in my imagination. And to this day, some 40 years later, I've steadfastly refused to even think I'm tired. One of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays includes a line that has always made an impact on me. Imagination, he said, is a very high sort of seeing. To me, this is seeing with a capital S. Seeing myself with boundless energy all those years ago allowed me to eliminate the obstacles of fatigue and energy depletion, and I created a new me in those imaginative moments. It will be difficult, and it will take a long time. These two similar excuses are frequently substituted for action. Now, imagine that you're incapable of creating these thoughts. In the same way that you can't imagine the mental activity of a jellyfish without ears or eyes that lives miles below the ocean surface, neither can you conceive of a task as being difficult or taking a long time. So if it were absolutely impossible for you to think this way, what would your life be like? Whatever it is that you'd like to accomplish, be it becoming an artist, creating your own musical composition, starting a new business, repairing your relationship with your parents or your spouse or anyone else, building a new home, getting into physical shape, anything at all, how would your world change if you couldn't even conceive of the idea that it would be difficult or take a long time? Without these excuses, what would life look like? It's a safe bet that you'd immediately initiate action propelling you in the direction of the fulfillment of your dreams. You'd talk to others who had similar kinds of dreams and then emerge successfully. You'd have a lot of energy, and you'd be actively engaged in the process of living the life you imagine. You'd attract synchronistic assistance and notice the right people, the right events, and the right circumstances persistently showing up. Why? Because you'd be acting just like the source of all creation does. You'd be aligned with a universe that says, yes, you can, and gives you the tools to prove it. You'd have no hesitation, no fear that something would be difficult or take too long. You'd happily do rather than explain or complain. And then, without these excuses, how would you feel? With these limitations completely out of the way, let me hazard a guess that you'd feel ecstatic and finally completely on purpose. A sense of freedom would delight you because avoidance of your true dharma would no longer exist. You'd feel enormous contentment rather than worrying about what you're avoiding or where you're going. There would be no focus on your destination since too long would no longer exist for you, and the now of the journey would provide the success and happiness you desire. You'd experience a great deal of bliss because you'd be guided by your creativity and initiative rather than fear of disappointment, and joy would rule your life. And without these excuses, what alternative thoughts would you have? Rather than focusing on what you can't do because it's difficult and takes a long time, you'd think like this. This is definitely something that I can and will create for myself. I know I can do anything I put my mind to. I anticipate that this is within my ability to readily accomplish it. I have no fear because I recognize that whatever guidance and assistance I require is available. I'm excited, thrilled, and elated about fulfilling this dream. I realize that the thoughts I have are meshed with enthusiasm and passion, and that nothing can stop me. In fact, I'm certain that whatever I need to actualize my dreams is already on its way. I contentedly watch for what the universe sends me. This gift of feeling good or feeling God within comes from serving and surrendering rather than asking and demanding. There's no room for blame in your life as long as you live with kindness. And excuses, regardless of their form, are all about blame. Blaming your past, blaming the economy, blaming your perceived personal flaws, blaming God, blaming your parents, blaming your children or your spouse, blaming your DNA. There's no shortage of circumstances, people, and events to blame, and there's no shortage of blame itself. When you shift to compassion, blame disappears. So no matter what you may want for yourself, discover how you can want it more for someone else, and then make that shift. In that contemplative moment, compassion will eradicate finger-pointing and trump excuse-making. And you'll begin to think like God thinks, serving, offering, giving, and loving freely. I've certainly found that when I remember to nurture kindness and courtesy, everything in my life seems to move towards more harmony and peace, to say nothing of how much better I feel when I'm giving rather than wanting. I heard the Dalai Lama speak on compassion some years back, and the essence of his message contained these 2 points. 1, that compassion is the single most important quality that humanity needs to learn. This is the way to find happiness and health and to feel successful. And 2, that war and violence would become extinct in 1 generation if, beginning at the age of 5, children were taught to meditate on compassion for an hour a week for the rest of their lives. Such is the power of a compassionate approach to life, which is truly thinking of others and living by the ancient golden rule. The very second you feel yourself retreating to excuses, repeat the mantra, "How may I serve?" Then act upon the answers you receive. You'll become aligned with universal mind, which is always giving, and the bonus is that you'll notice the universe asking you back, "How may I serve you?" As your compassion for others flows back to you, remember the truth I've written about many times in this book. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. So make compassion be what you are. Passion can only be experienced in this current moment. Now is where everything takes place. So your relationship to life is truly your relationship to the present moment. I love the definition of compassion offered by historian Arnold Toynbee. Quote, "Compassion is the desire that moves the individual self to widen the scope of its self-concern to embrace the whole of the universal self." Unquote. In any given moment of your life, when you embrace another beyond any concern for yourself, you are living compassion. You're also making it impossible to employ excuses. This is the time to widen your scope beyond self-concern and embrace a universal self that includes everyone, especially the person who is before you. Recognize that this moment is your power. Seize it and extend compassion without regard for yourself. And remember that your appointment with life is always in the present. Who are the most important people to work with? We often hear about and respond to the importance of offering assistance to others in drastic need in faraway places. As we try to work towards bringing about world peace, we join organizations dedicated to improving the lives of those who are most needy. Yet this doesn't answer this second question adequately. Whoever is in your immediate space is the most important person for you to work with, be it friend, family member, co-worker, or total stranger. Therefore, extend kindness to whomever you see before you. As Tolstoy reminds you, you can't know that you'll ever have dealings with anyone else. This is your moment, and the person to work with is right here. So the lesson is, don't look beyond the moment. Now is a perfect opportunity. Whoever is in your presence is the one who is available for your compassion. As the Vietnamese master Thich Nhat Hanh once observed, if you cannot make your own child happy, how do you expect to be able to make anyone else happy? If all our friends in the peace movement or of service communities of any kind do not love and help one another, Whom can we love and help? Are we working for other humans, or are we just working for the name of an organization? And 3, what is the most important thing to do at all times? Doing good is the equivalent of doing God. We're not here to conquer others, to wage war, to build towering temples to our deities, to become number one, to win anything or defeat anyone. No, we are here to be like God, or to be good, to serve, to reach out, to allow, not interfere, and be humble wherever we go. Give your ego a rest and live compassionately by being a decent human being.
The idea of just saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go 19 years and never have a drink again. That's just enough to send you off on a binge, isn't it? But you can do easy things, and you can get anywhere from here. You ever hear the line, a journey of 1,000 miles? What? Begins with one step. That's right out of the Tao Te Ching. That was Lao Tzu. It's so simple. So when you think about balance in your life, think like this about being in balance. You have a dream, and your dream is to live a life that goes a certain way, that looks a certain way, that feels a certain way. You have a dream that you would like to be able to attract prosperity into your life, that you would like to live a prosperous life. My favorite example, I did it on the PBS show, of the lady sitting next to me from San Francisco who was flying back from Maui after having just done a wedding. And I said to her, what do you do? And she said, I'm a photographer. And I said, oh, how's it going? And she said, well, I'm never going to get rich at it. Now, this is just a thought. Is it true? I don't know if it's true. How can that be? How can you know if that's true, that you're never going to get rich? You don't know. So I said to her, well, would you like to get rich? This was what I always ask when people ask me. Well, she said, well, of course. She said, who wouldn't want to be rich? Everybody wants to be able to buy the things they want. We all want that. I said, so let me see if I understand. You would like to get rich. That's your dream. But what you offer up to that dream is that it'll never happen. That's out of balance. That's the kind of balance I'm speaking about. The kind of balance that you begin to realize that there's a misalignment, if you will, between what it is that you are thinking and what it is that you offer up in the way of habits to make those dreams a reality. I call it principles for creating habits to match your desire. Listen to this quote. It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, want, like what you want, is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. Want is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. That is, what you want and what you have are completely and totally out of balance. And Lao Tzu says this to you through me. When you put your attention on what you intend to create and you stay aligned with the way, with the source from which you came, it will show up. It has to. It has to. So that all of the deficiencies, all of the things that you want but are not able to manifest, have not manifested yet into your life, all of it is not because the universe isn't working with you. It will. It's because you are not a vibrational match, an energetic match to what it is that you would like to create. And all today is about is learning to change the way you look at your life and understanding that the life that you're living will change just by your changing your opinion about it. It's so beautifully freeing to not
be concerned any longer with whether or not what you would like to have is going to show up.
If you would like to accomplish something, you must first expect it of yourself. And my question to you is, what do you expect of yourself? Do you expect to be able to perform miracles, to attract into your life the kind of prosperity that you are entitled to? Do you expect that you can manifest the kind of relationships that you would like? In order to be able to have these kinds of expectations for yourself, you have to make a dramatic change, a dramatic shift. You must change what's possible for you.
And as you know that there's more to you than just this body and this ego that is in that body, you recognize, I am a divine being, and this highest part of myself is where I want to begin my efforts at becoming a manifester. And here are just a few suggestions that I would recommend you do on a daily basis to get you to the place where you can learn to live from this highest self. The first of these is, whenever you're about to act, to do anything, if you have any conflict at all, you can ask yourself the question, is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to do going to bring me peace, more peace in my life, or is it going to bring a sense of turmoil? Is there going to be some struggle, some anxiety as a result of what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do? If the answer is peace, then it's your highest self. If the answer is turmoil, struggle, anxiety, stress, then the answer is your ego. So now you've identified, and now you know how to act. The way to act is with the way that will bring you peace. Even if it seems inconsistent, the way to act is the way that will bring you peace. The second thing to do is to start to learn to go beyond this restriction that you've experienced in the physical plane. The restrictions of the physical plane are many. Begin to say, I can transcend that. In your mind, begin to look at yourself as living in that physical plane, but that's not who you are. So figure out ways in your own consciousness to just get past all of these limitations that are a part of your body and your world. The third is, wherever you go, refuse to defend yourself to anyone or to anything on the earth plane. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You can just quietly be an effective human being and not get yourself into that position where you're arguing with someone over the rightness of how you feel. Just let go of that. And the higher part of you is saying, I want peace. I want peace. It's always there. Keep that in mind. And finally, learn to surrender and to trust in that wisdom that created you. The act of surrendering is letting go. Once you surrender and once you let go, you find yourself a whole lot freer in your life. This air that you're breathing is very friendly. This fire that keeps you warm, this sun that keeps you warm, it's very friendly. And so is the grass that you walk upon, and so is the snow that falls down, and so is the rain. Everything about the universe is supportive of you. So see it as a friendly place, rather than a place that is conspiring against you. You are not an organism in this environment. You are an organism/environment. You cannot be disconnected from it ever. So honoring that and recognizing that in your manifestation process, the work that you are doing to attract to yourself that which you desire in your life, you are really manifesting something that you are already a part of. You're just bringing into your world space that which is already you. So the way to put this principle to work in your life, here are a few suggestions that I would make, is first to make a conscious effort to check yourself when you begin to think in ways that reflect your separateness. When you start seeing something and telling yourself that, I'm not connected to that, or I can kill this, or I can move that, and it won't make any difference. And what difference does it make anyway if we cut down all of these trees, or whatever? Begin to see yourself as someone who is connected to everything in your universe, and that divine force that flows through you also is flowing through all of that. Second thing I would do is to just contemplate the energy that is your life force. This thing that keeps you alive, that is you in the first place. It's not that bone and gristle and blood and all of that you are looking at. It is something that is invisible, that is within you, and it is also in all of those things that you see in your environment. I would also begin to practice being gentle and respectful and loving toward the life force, not just in yourself, but in all things
and being respectful of it reminds you that you are in some way connected to it, so that by being kind to others, you are also being kind to yourself. There's something very much truthful in the notion that we are the world. It's more than just a clever song title. It really reflects that we all are a part of everything in this world, that none of us can be disconnected from it. I would also, again, determine that I would spend some time each day alone and in silence, meditating on this principle. And you repeat that affirmation: I am not an organism in an environment. I am an environ-organism. I am connected to it all. And just remind yourself of that. Also, I would make the space of my life as sacred as I possibly can, have as much beauty and sacredness in all things that show up in my life. Each and every one of us really do reflect the totality of humanity. We are all just little slivers in this whole conglomeration called humanity, and that when you take one of us and put a laser beam through it, just like on your credit card, it reflects the whole, and each one of us reflects that whole.